Welcome to Open Minds. I'm your host, Christopher Balkrin, and folks, sometimes I just get things completely wrong. And it very well may be the case that I have totally misread the University of Toronto's pro-Palestine encampments for days, weeks now. I've been posting videos about the pro-Palestine encampment saying it just doesn't make sense. The demands don't seem to truly make sense. I can't see the university doing any of this. Well, it turns out I was pretty damn wrong. But before I get to what the university has proposed, just happening today, I've also said that why don't these pro-Palestinian encampment protesters post more details about their demands, specifically on the divestment piece? You know, the university has a multi-billion-dollar portfolio. I can't imagine them divesting from companies that are complicit in the genocide, quote unquote, in Gaza and the West Bank. And I say that in quotation marks because it is a loaded term. There's a lot of debate on that, although I know there are many organizations that agree with it. I'm not trying to demean or dismiss the real issues happening in Gaza and the West Bank, but I say genocide in quotation marks for that reason. First of all, it's going to be hard for them to determine that. But secondly, why would the university allow students to determine its investment portfolio when it has to guarantee rates of return to its pensioners? It has to invest and expand its research opportunities. It has to invest and expand its capital infrastructure. It has to do so many different things that its asset management board of investors are responsible for. But it turns out that the university students did do a lot of research. In fact, just recently they posted, I don't know if this was recent or not, but they did post this, which I actually read through, folks, and trust me, it was an about-face moment. Disclose, divest. The University of Toronto's investments in Israeli apartheid, and it's a report about 24 pages detailing, where the university has invested in, which is, again, quite interesting. Now, I did take some notes, and I'm going to just share with you a couple really important notes that are important to this discussion. And just remember, this is not my opinion. This is directly from the report itself. Now, the first is that the University of Toronto does invest in at least 55 companies in the defense, arms, and aerospace sector, totaling about $4.35 billion. That money is also with companies that supply materials to the Israel Defense Force. The University of Toronto's asset management structure has 12 investment managers investing at least $3.95 billion in companies that are expanding supporting the construction and expansion of the illegal settlements in Palestinian territories. As well, the students have identified 53 companies that are profiting from the attacks on Gaza in 2023 and 2024, and investment managers at University of Toronto oversee $15.79 billion in assets, which invest in 34 of these companies. Now, again, these are not my numbers. These are directly from that report. Still very vague, but at least it's more specific. And that has been one of my biggest criticisms of the encampment. They're not specific enough. But it turns out, guess what, folks? Guess what? I couldn't believe this today, but it happened. The University of Toronto's president offers agreement to students conditional on encampments clearing. President Merrick Gartler, speaking at a press conference, says demands on divestment and disclosure are on the table, but rejects cutting academic ties. That's right, folks. The university is prepared to discuss divestment and disclosure. It's a quite lengthy article. But at a high level, the university says it will create an expert working group to consider options for disclosure and increase transparency regarding the university's investments. Now, you might not think that's a win, because to be honest, that's probably just more bureaucracy. But to me, that's a huge win. That's a huge win if I were one of the protesters, because there's a commitment to at least be transparent and more open with the investment structure. And that may change future investment decisions by the university. Again, folks, I got this completely wrong. I thought there'd be no way the university would ever agree to this. And here we are. The university is 100% agreeing to it. Now, I will say, just in my own commentary about all of this, which is an about face for me, there's a couple things I think the universities, the pro-Palestinian encampment, they could have actually done better at winning over more people if they were better managed, if that makes sense. If they had a terms and conditions, I sound like a bureaucrat. If they had terms and conditions, if they had codes of conduct, they could actually find themselves much more effective. Now, what do I mean by all of this? We all know pro-Palestinian encampments and protests lend themselves to a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic remarks. There are many, many instances of that. I've experienced that in my own personal life. I'm sure many of you have as well. I found this video on Twitter. This is not at an encampment at all. I just had it, now I lost it. But anyways, it's not it was just a pro-Palestinian protest at City Hall with some of the pro-Palestinian protesters, saying all types of slurs towards Jewish people at City Hall. And, that's sadly very common. And if the encampments had a code of conduct saying, we don't tolerate anti-Semitism, we don't tolerate discrimination and hatred towards Jewish students or Jewish people, I think that might actually help win over more moderates. I think the other thing that could have helped, and still, what the heck do I know? They're winning their cause, but another thing that maybe they could consider moving forward is, also remembering that they're at the juxtaposition of, or intersection of, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Remembering that many of those students are empathetic with DEI as a movement, the onus is even more so on them to create a space that is safe and brave and accepting, etc., whatever language you want to use, for students of all walks of life, even those students who disagree with them. And I think the students in the encampments took a more militant position to get their points across, particularly doing encampments right before convocation as the weather's warming up, strategically. So a code of conduct, a terms of reference, making sure that there are certain words that are inflammatory that's not included, actually works against their cause a little bit in terms of the efficacy. Now, the real, I think the real premise or precedence this sets is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, really, when you think about it, the encampment wasn't a protest. It's an encampment on private property. And what the University of Toronto is saying is, stay on our campus long enough and eventually we're going to cave to your demands. I mean, it's a flippant way of summarizing this movement, but I find that I'm perplexed and surprised by university administrators caving to these demands, because, again, it boggles my mind that students are now going to have a say in investment decisions by the University of Toronto. You try doing that with your bank. You try doing that with any publicly traded company on its investment portfolio. And you'll find out how quickly you're just shut out of the room completely, even you as an investor. And, it just, I don't know, it boggles my mind. So, interesting precedence that's being set here. I wanted to also share with you, I thought I had it. Oh, I don't have it. The testimony today, actually, I should find it. The testimony today from the chancellor of UCLA about the pro-Palestinian encampments. The testimony was quite interesting about what the university will do now moving forward. So I'm going to play just a clip of that and love to know your thoughts because I found this quite interesting.
Chancellor Block, you're.
Before the necessary police resources could be assembled, assailants attacked the encampment that evening. Tragically, it took several hours before law enforcement could quell the violence. On May 1st, with the support of the University of California's President Michael Drake, we provided protesters a final opportunity to leave. But when more than 200 protesters refused police orders, law enforcement removed the encampment that night. With the benefit of hindsight, we should have been prepared to immediately remove the encampment if and when the safety of our community was put at risk.
I'm going to pause there. So, very interesting that the chancellor even sees that the moment that safety was a concern, the encampment should have been removed. And that's very strong language from the chancellor to some. To me, it seems quite reasonable, but to some, it's quite strong language. But it's a very interesting contrast to what I'm seeing from the University of Toronto in not taking too hard a stance or a line on this. But I'd love to know what you think. What are your thoughts about the University of Toronto's decision? What are your thoughts of the UCLA chancellor's decision or comments on not moving quickly enough? And do you think that this working group will include students and it will actually change the investment structure of the University of Toronto? And also, finally, are you totally surprised and shocked as I am about this movement? Again, folks, I got this totally wrong, or at least partially wrong, or at least some of it wrong. But that's part of the Open Minds experience on YouTube for me to share with you my successes and also where I totally missed the mark. So let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll catch you in the next one.